auditorium, sport facilities, and worship facilities. To develop interests and talents of students, Utarajaya is a unit of student activity that covering student regiments, nature lover, arts, Islamic family, Christian family of Utarajaya, sports, Barakita Choir, and Young Writers Unit. By continuously developing supporting education infrastructures and constant commitment in improving academic quality, Utarajaya has attracted increasing number of students year by year. Both students and institutions of Utarajaya have achieved various awards and recognition from national as well as international respected and authoritative organizations. Institutional accreditation from the National Accreditation Board is a better description of the Utarajaya commitment to become an excellent learning and teaching institution. Cooperation with various lecturers, both domestically and abroad, has been also continuously promoted in order to achieve the best curriculum, research, and development. Bayangkara Jakarta Raya University is certainly on the right roadmap to become a world-class university. Bayangkara Jakarta Raya University or Utarajaya is one of the private universities under Brata Bhakti Foundation. Established in 1995, Utarajaya aims to contribute development of a high-quality education at national level. Ever since its establishment, Utarajaya is steadily moving forward to become an internationally accepted as a world-class higher education university. Committed to become a science-based university, Utarajaya has gained high expertise in security studies. Utarajaya is directed to produce human resources who have superior characters and who are able to compete globally. The university has two campuses located in South Jakarta and in Bekasi City. The university is conducting bachelor and magister level education with 7 faculties: Engineering Faculty, Faculty of Law, Faculty of Economic and Business, Faculty of Communications, Faculty of Psychology, Faculty of Education, and Faculty of Computer Science. For postgraduate programs, Utarajaya conduct two programs, Legal Science Masters and Management Masters. Utarajaya has two research development centers. They are Police Science and Anti-Corruption Research Center and National Security Research Center. To support the learning and teaching process, Utarajaya has various facilities among others. Television studio, radio studio, public relation laboratory, photo and editing laboratory, library, language laboratory, psychology laboratory, experimental psychology laboratory, audiovisual psychology laboratory, accounting laboratory, chemistry laboratory, basic physics laboratory, petroleum engineering laboratory, environmental engineering laboratory, industrial engineering laboratory, micro-teaching laboratory, sport laboratory, judicial room, clinic, auditorium, sport facilities, and worship facilities. To develop interests and talents of students, Utarajaya has some unit of student activity that covering student regiments, nature lover, arts, Islamic family, Christian family of Utarajaya, sports, Barakita choir, and young writers unit. By continuously developing supporting education infrastructures and constant commitment in improving academic quality, Utarajaya has attracted increasing number of students year by year. Both students and institutions of Utarajaya have achieved various awards and recognition from national as well as international respected and authoritative organizations. Institutional accreditation from the National Accreditation Board is a better description of the Utarajaya commitment to become an excellent learning and teaching institution. Cooperation with various lecturers, both domestically and abroad, has been also continuously promoted in order to achieve the best curriculum, research, and development. Bayangkara Jakarta Raya University is certainly on the right roadmap to become a world-class university.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to International Collaboration General Lecture 2021 between Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya and University of Mindanao, Philippines. Please have a nice seat and thank you very much for preparing yourself to join our webinar. Our webinar is about to begin. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Your Excellency, Director of Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya, Inspektur Jenderal Polisi Purnawirawan, Dr. Andes Bambang Karsono, SHMM, and the ranks. Honorable the Dean of the Faculty of Communication Science of Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya, Mr. Dr. Aan Widodo, SICOM Emicom, and the ranks. Your Excellency, Executive Vice President, University of Mindanao, Dr. Roni Amorado. Honorable Vice President, External Relations and International Affairs Office, Dr. Reynaldo C. Castro. Respectable, the Dean of the College of Criminal Justice Education, Carmelita Bates Chavez, PhD. Assistant Dean of College Tagum College, Lucella B. Regidor, PhD. And Link Officer Iza Aima G. Montede Ramos. Honorable, the today's webinar speaker, Dr. Hiskia Yosias Polimpung, SIP MSI, and Mrs. Carmelita B. Chavez, PhD, CSP, CST. The Honorable all lecturers of Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya and University of Mindanao, Philippines, and our beloved students. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This, this is an honor and awesome chance for me to be the moderator of today's webinar. Introduce myself, my name is Fadli Muhammad Atalarik. I'm very pleased to see you all here and welcome all of you to this webinar. Welcome to International Collaboration General Lecture 2021 between Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya and University of Mindanao, Philippines. This general lecture will talk about how to do things with the word security in Introduction to Security Communication. Let me introduce our speaker today. The first is Dr. Hiskia Yosias Polimpung, SIPMSI from Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya, and Mrs. Carmelita Bates Chavez, PhD, CSP, CST from University of Mindanao. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start this webinar, let's sing the national anthems of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya, and the national anthems of Philippines, Lupang Hinirang. Audience, please open the camera and sit properly. Thank you for your willingness. The next agenda is opening remarks by the Dean of the Faculty of Communication Science of Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya, Mr. Dr. Aan Widodo, SECOM. For Dr. Aan Widodo, the time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Fadli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will to organize the general lecture which discusses with security communication. The general lecture today was held to start a new semester in the academic activities of the Faculty of Communication. The general lecture with the theme how to do the things with the word security is the implementation of the collaboration between Utarajaya, Universitas Bhayangkara Jakarta Raya University and Mindanao University. Honorable to our rector, Pak Dr. Bambang Karsono, SHMM, honorable to the executive Vice President UM, Dr. Roni Amorado and team, Vice President External Relation and International Affair Office, Dr. Reynaldo C. Castro, honorable to the Dean of the College of Criminal Justice Education, Miss Carmelita Beth Cafes, PhD, Assistant Dean of College UM, Tagum College, Lucella B. Regidor, PhD, and Link Officer UM, Iza Aimaji. And our speakers, Dr. Hiskia Yosias Polimpung, our team of Utarajaya, Vice Dean, Bu Wici, Bu Nurul, and Bu Titis, all the team moderator, Bapak Fadli, and Dean, Vice Dean, and lecturer, all of representative from Utarajaya and Mindanao University. From a communication perspective, security issue are one of the focus in scientific studies. Security communication emphasize the meaning of the communication process, which is included in various communication contexts, among other public communication, mass media, mass communication, digital communication, and interpersonal communication. Security communication, a study developed by Vicom Utarajaya, has been developed in the last 3 years ago in 3 specifications: strategic PR, broadcasting media industry, and digital communication. And it is still being developed, so it requires studies, suggestion, and discussion in various scientific and practical activities. We hope these activities can be followed to the end so that we can get to know the security communication side as development of the communication context. We can get an explanation of security communication application and gets to know the scope of security communication. Thank you to all the who attended. Hopefully the collaboration Utarajaya, Universitas Bayangkara Jakarta Raya, and the Mindana University can be continue and useful. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the welcome, Mr. Aan. Before we continue to the next agenda, I would like to invite the audience, especially the audience in the Zoom meeting, to take picture together. So please open your camera and give your best smile on your faces. Okay. Uh, okay. We count 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Once more again. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Tries 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much for the audience, for the bad smile that you give to this moment. Okay, now let's move to the main agenda. It's the material presentation. Before that, it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. The first is he was born on 28th July 1986. He was graduated as a bachelor in Erlangen University in majoring international relations on 2008. And then he was graduated as a master in University of Indonesia majoring international relations on 2010. And then he finished his doctoral program in University of Indonesia majoring philosophy of science on 2016. His topic interest based on Google Scholar is new security studies, global political economy, urban studies, science and technological studies, and neuropsychoanalysis. And now he's the lecturer in University of Bayangkara, Jakarta Raya. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Dr. Hiskia Yosias Polimpong. For Mr. Yosi, you might take the floor.
Okay, check. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a wonderful time for me to be here, and thank you very much for the organizer for having me. Okay, so I would like to present a small portion of what what is called security communication. So the field of security communication itself is still relatively young. So I think by young I mean it's only the first handbook only comes in 2019 if I'm not mistaken. So before we go further in this discussion and the topics that I will bring forth in this presentation, that is how to do things with the word security. I think it's not going to be painful for us if we visit a bit on the field of the security communication itself, because I don't know how many people in here coming from the backgrounds of communication, but I have to tell you that this lecture will be coming from the perspective of communication. But I will try to moderate it so that everybody coming from diverse background could also catch along with the discussion. Okay, I'd like to. Can I share?
Wait, Mr. Yosi.
Okay, thank you.
It's already? Okay, it's already, Mr. Yosi. You can present.
Yeah. Okay, I hope everybody's getting the transmission well. Okay, I will start with the old age contention, old age debates on what is security. So the first thing that comes to mind always, security is a feeling. Like you You can experience security, like the secure feelings, like you have safety, you have friends, you have family, you have everything that you need is in front of you. That's how the commonplace definition of security. But the the concept of security itself can also be applied to like more uh, societal ones. Societal ones, I mean, the social security, the societal security, the security concerning the society at large. It also come to be used in state perspective, the national security, international security. And with the coming of the digital age, the 4.0 revolutions, etc., it also becomes commonplace to talk about security in terms of computers. So we're talking about cybersecurity, digital security, social media security, etc., etc. But what remains debatable is the nature of the security itself. So I will not solve the discussion here. I will not propose my definition of security, what I think security has to be best perceived, has to be best defined, etc. No, I'm not going to that way, but I will, yeah, I will walk everybody through this the new discipline of security communication that enables us to see how any definition of security can emerge. So if we have to agree on some basic assumption before we go further, because security communication rests its assumption first in that security is essentially contested in nature. It means what security means for me will be different for you. So not everybody thinks that security is the same thing as in my heads and as in your heads and everybody's heads. So security is diverse in its definition, but somehow some people stick to this relativistic nature of security. Okay, security, people can interpret security according to their own belief, blah blah blah. So it's wasting time to make a theory of security. So everybody coming from computer science, neuroscience, psychology, sociology, anthropology, communication, blah blah, they come up with their own definition of security. So it's not healthy for scientific enterprise, because when we are confronted with something that is elude theorization, it means our theory is bad. So it's not that the phenomena is beyond theory, but a good scientific practice will also include the relativity, the relative nature of the security itself. So that's why my position, my first position in this talk will be the relativity of security has to be theorized. So the multi-dimensional, the multi interpretation nature of security has to be theorized. So of course, this position is not only shared by me, but I also not the first who declared such position. But back in the 80s, 1980s, some scholars try to challenge this notion of security that is so straight jacket. I mean, closed in nature, like security. When we talk about security, it's only about military security. It's only about sovereignty, blah blah. Blah. So people who's coming from the perspective that is not non-state centric, they tend to argue that the security should not and must not be monopolized by the state, must not be monopolized by the state apparatuses like police, like the 10E soldiers, and then military, etc. So everybody has the right for security, and also everybody must be counted as security actors. So this basic assumption will guide our discussion in this talks. Okay, I will talk about three things mainly. Largely, I will cover three things. The first is the field of security communication. It is impossible to like sums up all the finesses of the theories of the researchers in security communication, but I will give a glimpse on how vast, how wide can security communication research be. And then the second, we will talk about a more conceptual and theoretical sense of security, especially the communicative turn in security, the communicative perspective in seeing security. We will cover about speech act theories, performativity theories, and then how security scholars apply speech act theories and performativity theories in security studies. They expounds the securitization theories. We will talk about sectors and debates within securitization theory. And then the last thing, I will present some questions that I think worth debating, worth discussing as the implication of the securitization theories. So if the first part we're talking about how to do things with the word security, and then in the second part of the talk, we will adopt a more critical stances in criticizing the theory itself. So where or how do the word security do its things? Okay, first, it's not, I hope it's not going to be long. So the basic assumption of security communication on the right hand side is the first book that covering security communication. It issued in 2019. So as I told you earlier, it's very, very young. So basic assumption of security communication is that first, security is communicative in nature. So if you say that security is non-communicative in nature, it means security doesn't involve communication. Security can exist without communication practices, and that's what doesn't hold in this security communication perspective. And as you will see later, uh, the scholars in security communication studies will argue that this theory covers everything, covers even the domain of non-communication. And the second, security is an effect of communication. I mean, by this line, I mean, by doing communication, by the practice of communication, one specific practice of communication will engenders, will create its own definition, its own meaning, its own practice of security. For example, with the rise of social media, there also arise a new issue of security, like from bullying, from hacking of Twitter account, hacking of WhatsApp account, blah blah blah. So these security concerns about the integrity of our social media accounts uh, is not arise when social media is not coming. So that's what security is an effect of communication means. The demarcation, it's a definitional. I mean, it's quite important because people always no. If you Google communication and security, you will most likely find anything about computer, anything about a gadget, anything about cyber hacking, etc., etc. So you will find there's only scarce material covering security communication as we are talking about here. So the first is communication security. So what you will encounter in the internet when you put in security and communication in the Google search is the first notion, the communication security. So by communication security, it means communication is something to be secure. The integrity of the message, the process of communication, the platform itself, those are to be secure. If we talk about communication security, the perspective will not be communication because communication only appears as an object to be secure. But on the other hand, if we're talking about communicative security, the second sense, communicative security, we're talking about communication as an adverb, security as a noun, security as something that modifies, communication as something that modifies security. So there's one aspect of security that is communication in nature. For example, if we talk about the nature of security, we're discussing about military issue. So the security has military dimension. But seen from communication perspective, security will have a communication dimension. So the communication, cultural, political, blah blah blah, constitute only one aspect of security. So that's what communicative security means. So it entails security that has characters of communication and security with communicational aspect. So the implication for the study, the further consequence, we will see security as communication, security itself as the process of communication. That's why the discussion of today's discussion, we're not talking about communication security, but we will talk about security communication or communicative security. So we will see first and foremost how communication practices shape security, and then we will move into a more abstract sense on how communication perspective exhaustively explains security. So we will displace the security communication has the potential to displace security studies in general. So that line of argument is what we in Utarajaya tries to develop. But there's still we still need many research and many exploration on that subject. But for the sake of today's talk, I will also cover the communicative dimension of security. Yeah, there are four line of agenda in security communication. So students, if you want to make a scriptsy or make a undergraduate thesis, you can try to explore in one of these four lanes. The first is studying security as communication event. So security as an event is seen as security as process of transmission and reproduction of message. So for example, the call from one president to another president, and how we see how to see the communication as something to be secure. That's studying security as an event. Excuse me, can I write this annotation? Rid of this annotation. Okay, I just continue. Second, the first is if we study communication security as a communication event, so we will talk about security as theme, as topic to be discussed. So how people discuss about, for example, terrorism. People talk about terrorism, they usually use words like blah blah blah. They usually shared meaning about blah blah blah. They also associate the word terrorist with blah blah blah. So that's how security as a theme or topic in communication. And the second aspect is communication in the context of security. So security here becoming a context. For example, in the context of the early strike of pandemic in March 2020 in Southeast Asia, we can see how people talk about health security in the context of pandemic and in the context of before the pandemic. There's a difference in between the two. Also, we can also talk about how communication occurs, how the behavior of communication, how the process of communication occurs in the context of crisis, in the context of global catastrophe like flood, mountain eruption, etc., etc. So security is a context in this second conception of security communication. The third, studying the manifestations forms and definitions of security and insecurity made possible by today's system of communication. So as I mentioned earlier, a different technological configuration will spawn different meaning of security. So when we talk about social media security, we will most likely associate security with security of our accounts, for example, security from breach from the corporate, from the government, from the spy, from the others, etc. So the security issues is very peculiar, very specific to the configurations of the technology itself. And if we jump to like national security issue, the issue would not be the account, the president social media account per se, but the security issue would be like the integrity of the territorial integrity. It will be about the sovereignty of communication system, the sovereignty about the cloud storage, etc. So even it's in the same communication perspective, but if we go to a diverse technological configuration, we will see different issue emerge from that system, different system of technical configuration. The fourth aspect of security communication is studying the possibility of mode and method of securitization. For example, if we use a conventional method of securitization, we will talk much about securitization later. But for now, securitization is a communicative act on securing things. So by securing things, mean we say that something is in danger, that it entails that this object has to be secure. So by saying that something is being threatened and that we have to secure it, that means securitization. So the studying the possibility of mode and method of securitization means, for example, in verbal communication, by securitization, we saying it out loud by words, by language, etc. But on the other hand, if we use Instagram, for example, if we want to secure things, we have to exploit, we have to use the features like the story, the reels, reels, Instagram stories, Instagram reels, Instagram shorts, the post also has to be cropped like in a square or rectangular, blah blah blah. You cannot type words more than 144 in Twitter's. Sorry, I think it's already expanded here. Not 144. So the limitation of the media will also limit the possibility of method and mode on how you securitize things. For example, by verbal communication, we cannot securitize by using memes, for example. But in Instagram or in social media, we can deploy like dozens and hundreds, even thousands of memes. For example, like in the quote unquote the internet civil wars in Russia, the incumbent, the status quo, they use like mass disinformation strategy by deploying memes. So memes has become weaponized in this context. So new world of communication, new system of communication will also make possible new mode of securitization. So that's why we have to pay heed to what Claude Shannon is one of the founders of the communication studies, which ironically he's coming from the engineering background. So the text that communication scholars also often refer is ironically a mathematical piece, a mathematical article. So the fundamental problem of communication is that of reproducing at one point either exactly or approximately a message selected at another point. Frequently, the message have meaning, that is, they refer to or are correlated according to some system with certain physical or conceptual entities. these semantic aspects of communication are irrelevant to the engineering problem. So what are irrelevant here? It is the meaning of the communication. So if we adopt this perspective on seeing communication as not only about meaning, not only about shared meaning, not only about constructing meaning, but more on about transmitting signals, transmitting message, the possibility of the research will open. So this is what Claude Shannon said. So Claude Shannon definition points us toward the security aspect of communication as being the process of message transmission. So the fundamental problem of communication is the transmission. So what are commonly studied in communication, especially I think in Indonesia, we talk too much about shared meaning. We talk about too much about culture, etc. While we left behind the technical aspect of this communication. Thus, the minimum definition of security in the context of communication, my proposition will be the security of the reproduction process of message from one point to other point so that its resemblance and integrity is preserved. So there are three rounds in this security communication. The first in technical, and then in linguistic, and then in environmental. Yeah, three intertwined aspect of security in security communication. This is I will present some works which can be classified, can be canonized as a security communication studies, although they don't declare their works as security communication, but their line of argument, their presentation could be classified along the security communication perspective. So for example, how new network gives birth to new kinds of power. Manuel Castells work on communication power, one of the famous work in political communication. Although I don't think I don't quite agree if this study could be classified as political communication, because this is a communication studies of politics. So it's not political communication. So we're not talking about communication political dimension of politics. No, it's on the other hand. It's talking about politics from the perspective of communication. So
According to Wikipedia, politics is the set of activities that are associated with making decisions in groups or other forms of power relations between individuals, such as the distribution of resources or status.
Sorry, my AI gone white. Okay. What Manuel Castells' work exemplifies is how the new network of power will also produce new sets of power. For example, there are 4 types of power that made possible by the existing communication networks. There are networking power, network power, networked power, network making power. So this kind of power will not apply in the real world, quote unquote, but for example, networking power. If you know some influencers, artists like Instagram artists, etc., they don't have power in real world, but their power resides only in social media. And what is the currency of their powers? The number of the followers. See, for example, that's why when we're talking about the convertibility, how to like convert social media power to real political power, it's also interesting area of studies. But what Manuel Castells bring to light here is how we should understand power, what in the perspective of networks. And the second study that also intrigued me so much is how the digital ICT transformation is transforming, or according to Benjamin Brereton, they use the word terraforming. Terra is mean earth, terraforming not only the world order, but also the Earth structure and the global constellation. It even Benjamin Bratton goes so far as saying that the new state system, for example, international scholars, international relation students must also know that the existing present system of international is called Westphalian system. What Benjamin Bratton shows is that the Westphalian system that has been around since 1600, since the 16th century, is made irrelevant by the coming of this digital ICT transformation. What I mentioned earlier, it transforms the world order itself. So we're talking about the implication of communication technologies, not only on the meaning, not only on the social relations, but on the entire structure of world of the world of the state system, of the international system, of the global constellation. So in the left-hand side, I quote what I think the most representative for Benjamin Bratton's work. So we observe that computation does not just denote machinery, it is planetary scale infrastructure. So computer is not just computer. Computer is like structure, logic that structures the world today. That is changing not only how governments govern, but also what governance even is in the first place. Jadi, we're talking about new types of government. For example, if you use Facebook, Facebook has like constitution, like terms and condition on what is allowed and what is not. And it even has the politional capacity. It can take down your post, it can delete your account, blah, 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 just as police does in real world. So the new type of government here can also happen by this new order of technology that is computational in nature. So computation is a logic of culture, and so also a logic of design. Yeah, Benjamin Bratton is a design professor, political design. So his theories talk about the stack, like on the right hand side you can see the book. The stack is a new configuration of on new framework on how the structure of the world relates, like from the earth structure, it's mean geological cloud structures, it mean data storage, city, it means states, and then community address, it means location, interface, we're talking about screen, we're talking about user interface, user experience, and the user layer, etc. I'm not going further into this work, which is very much exciting, but it's enough for me to say that security communication studies can also study this kind of studies. That is the implication of digital transformation, the communication transformation to the world. Okay, I would just skip it. And then we also see another frontiers of security communication research. We're not content. We're not content with saying media as mass media, like the computers, social media, blah blah. But they go so far as to define living creatures as media. This is a very unconventional, even for communication scholars, but it is quite common in anthropological studies, in media studies, coming from the archaeology, coming from the anthropology, from the art science and philosophy alike. So it's quite uncommon in communications studies, but I think in the security communication, they can intersect the research. So what does it mean that living creatures is a media? So we have to come back to the definition of media. Media is something that stores data, that stores information, something that stores, that can generate, and that can transmit. So if we, for example, look at the the center image, like this image, we can see how surveillance technology, the vision machine technology, captures data that is being generated by the self, by the gestures, by the if we see human body as a media, it means human body like conceives information that can be mined, that can be uh, gathered by the technologies. So this will, I think it's very much heated debate that has been around since since the dawn of AI, the so-called dawn of AI in 2010, when people raised concerns about the intrusive aspect of security technologies, the surveillance technologies. Like they quantify me, they quantify myself without my consent. They can read, they can map out, pinpoint my location, and then make a pattern out of it, and then sell it to other people who have money, who have powers, etc. And then it's a security issues. It's a human rights issues. So this is also one outlet of research in security communication that quite interesting for me. We also thought about new kind of war in the social media by using memes, by using strategies like flaming, like inciting things in social media. It's also interesting. Even some people goes on to describe the tactics, the strategy, and the good things is that it sells. Like all populists and the right wing presidents, right wing politicians love to use internet wars, and a lot more in the field of security communication. But in this, I will only discuss one aspect of security communication, that is dialogical, rhetoric, linguistic, and dimension. So, security as a speech act. Yeah, if we take this, the words, the line, I stole the line from John Austin. So, how to do things with words. So, he was the first to theorize how mere words can have consequences, can have many consequences, not only social but also psychological and even political effect. So word matters. So there are word beyond words. So security can be seen as following the same logic of speech act, and thereby grants its performative structure. So what is a speech act? Speech act is by saying something, we're doing something. So by saying I do, when the priest when the priest asks you whether you would like to marry your husband, wife, etc. If you don't say I do, then there will be no marriage at all. So there's my friends make a joke. He doesn't want to marry, so when the priest asks him, do you accept your wife, blah 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 blah, and then he says, yes, I love her, but not I do. So in that sense, no marriage at all. Naming a baby also a speech act. So for example, my name is Hiskia Yosias Simon. If you are coming from Christian background, it's a heavy name. Like Hiskia Yosias is a two king of Israeli king, and then Simon is one of the prophet. So I am expected through all my life, I'm expected to behave like in a pious Christian way of life. So how, just by naming, just by giving a name to this flesh and body, it has more than words consequences. Insulting also a speech act. For example, if I say something bad about you, it's never just a word. I cannot say, come on, it's just a word. I'm saying that you're a dog or you're a tag or something. It's beyond. It's more than just saying you are a one figure of animal like that. Labeling in politics, for example, in Indonesia, for example, in 65, if you want to kill somebody, like easy kill, just label them communist, and then the army will come and like flatten their house. And then in the context of Ahmadiyya in Indonesia, if you say that a community Ahmadiyya, it means it's end for them. So labeling in politics also a speech act. So by just naming somebody, it entails like many things that will affect not only in communication sense but also in their life. In fact, that's what speech act theory is. So in speech act theory, there are three aspects. The first aspect is locution. Locution is the semantic meaning, like the meaning of each and every word you use in saying security. Like you can use it, you can find the words in dictionary, in thesaurus, etc. So that's locution. Elocution, for example, it's the intention. By saying something, you intend to do something. For example, when I say watch out by we can find the word watch and out in dictionary. But if we say watch out, it not only mean something that is written in dictionary, but also by saying watch out, it means I intend to warn you about something. I intend to warn you about something that you have to avoid, you have to be aware of, etc. So this brings us to the third dimension, that is perlocution, the intended effect. So when I intend for you to be aware of something, my intention, the expected behavior I expect on you is that you becoming aware by my warning, by my speech act activities. So that's speech act. This theory this theory is something that is very valuable when we're talking about security in the perspective of speech act, as we will discuss in the later slides. Second one is performativity. Performativity is something becomes meaningful by its sheer repetitive citing and reiteration. For example, but don't try this at home. If you want to condition people's mentality, maybe that's why bullying is bad. So when you say somebody is like, ah, you're ugly, or you're yeah, for example, saying people ugly for one time, maybe it doesn't affect him or her. But if you say it like each and every day, and you say it not only by you but also by the other people, and then this person we're talking about will somehow like retrospect, am I that ugly, etc. So by saying something repetitively, you can engender meaning. You can make something that is non-existent become something that exists. So that's performativity. For example, also there's a discussion on gender. What is gender? I'm a female or a male. I'm a masculine or a feminine. But if from the perspective of performativity, they will ask what a feminine is what you are, or what you perform. If you have certain organ, will that qualify you directly as being feminine or not, etc. That's the discussion. Also, the social priming, like the advertising, they prime us, they prime our sense into perceiving something as good, into perceiving something as bad, and then we will buy it. Bigotist ideology, for example, they don't question their belief, they don't question their assumption, they just take things for granted, and then even they aggressively counter those who have different perspective. So that's how performativity works. So security as a speech act has a spatial dimension. So it's not only just has perlocutionary dimension, illocutionary dimension, is not only have performativity dimension, but security as a spatial speech act. It also creates a space of exception, space of what is exception? What is exception? Exception is when you are being accepted, when you are being outside of the general order, of the general normality. So normal politics become exceptional politics. When in normal politics everything goes in order, there's a rule of law, but in exceptional politics the law is suspended. Like you can do like anything. You can make a decree. You can make things that goes against the law even. So that's how Security Speech Act is spatial. You displace normal politics with exceptional politics. The existing order is suspended, and then the spatial power is granted. What is spatial power? Spatial power is when the power goes beyond the law, when the power goes beyond the existing convention on how to exert power and how to control the use of power. So because this is emergence, so we will have one body, we will have one groups of people who have spatial privilege to do like literally anything. And then somehow to legalize this new order, this new power, a new law is issued. So that's make critical discussion on security will also bring about the question of how public participation is curbed and curtailed in the context of this spatial speech act, the security speech act. How can people still be participated? How can state still be democratic in this context of security speech acts? Because in the name of security, like you can do anything if you have power and money. Securitization. So this is the most popular and most famous application of Security Speech Act in the context of security studies. So there's a Barry Buzen and Oli Wafer. If you see the left person is Barry Buzen and the right person is Oli Wafer. They're the first to say they're first to theorize about securitization. So securitization is a process of speech act because by doing something, by saying something, we're doing something. So in other words, by securing something, by saying that something is in danger, you are securing it. So security is done by saying so. Security has a performative effect. Its meaning arises from its enactment, from the practice of performing it. There's a 5 stage. The first stage is referent object, construction of threat narratives, declaration of security, legalization of exception, and mobilization. So this is I hope it could be, you don't have to like memorize it, but it can be a like mental framework on how we like probe the security issues that emerge around us. The first is referent object. What is referent object? Referent object, the issues when we are deciding on referent object is what's to be secured, what is being threatened, according to whom. For example, for me, I'm being threatened from the conditions where I cannot eat, for example. But for those who like abundant with foods, abundant with money, the poor condition is non-threatening for them, for example. So the conditions of threat itself is very, very subjective depending on who you're talking to, who you are asking the question to, and with what consequences. Who should be protected? Whose safety is worth protecting, for example. In the event of terrorism, for example, is it permitted to shoot the perpetrators, or is it permitted to let the perpetrators live, etc.? That's the issue of referent object. Also, when in pandemic, for example, who's the referent object from the pandemic recovery? Is it the economy or the people? So reference object is quite slippery in this sense. So that's the reference object, being the first aspect of securitization. And the second is the threat narrative. Threat is a narrative. You have to construct a narrative. You have to construct a story or academic papers or like white papers, blah, blah, blah. I often write about it, right? That's a threat narrative. So the narrative here is a story that can be wrapped in like academic lingos, like in journalistic lingos, etc. But still, it's a story. However, you cover it with like long list of citation, long list of statistics and data, blah blah blah. Still, it's a narrative. Still, it's a theory. It's a story. So the narrative should consist of who is the attacker, who is the threat, or what is the threat if it's not human. What motivates her? What motivates it? What is her target? Where does she aims? Which part? So when threat, for example, threatening us by he will attack us, blah blah. We have to ask a threat. Security scholars should ask what part of our infrastructure, what part of our existence that will be struck by their attack. That's a security analysis in this sense. With what kind of weapon? Because different weapon will have different effects on how the magnitude of the impact, the corrosiveness, etc., etc. And we have to also estimate the impact, how much we can survive if one attack happening, etc., etc. There's a specific studies in here in these security studies. We're talking about threat narrative. We're talking about this is the technical terms: threat modeling, attack vector, attack surface, power source, vulnerability, etc., etc. The point that I would like to stress here is that threat narrative is always a story. However, you use like religious lingo, like the God has sent cataclysm, has sent misery around us because we are sinful, because we don't pray so much, blah blah blah. That's also a threat narrative. For example, our morality is being endangered by the lesbians, by the gays, blah blah blah, or by the alcohols, blah blah. That's also a threat narrative. That's also a story. By saying it a story, it means it can be challenged. It can be analyzed how the truth claim of the theory of the story is coming from. The third is declaration of security. Declaration of security, we're talking about the event when we state that we are insecure. For example, when a president grab a mic and say we are in grave danger, blah, blah, blah. So by the meaning of declaration of security, we're not talking only about the words, the dictions, but also about the style. For example, if I say we are in grave danger like that, that would have impact as big as if I say it with a smaller words. For example, we are in grave danger, something like that. So it's also an object of analysis in this declaration of security. And usually PR and communication studies have many things to say about it. So we are talking about what narrative is to develop, what slogan should be used, what label to deploy, what feeling should be invoked, what is the public reception, how to persuade people into legitimating. That's the declaration of security. Legalizing exception, which law or regulation is suspended, on what kind of state of emergence, whose power is reinforced, who is weakened, what is allowed and what isn't during the suspension, until when, with what parameter. That's all the questions when we are in the fourth stage of legalizing exception. So when we declare security, we automatically declare we are in the state of emergence. We are in the states of exception, so that everybody is suspended in terms of like legal rights. So a new order, a new set of rights is reinforced. The last dimension of the securitization is mobilization. What program or activity should be done during exception? What strategy and tactics? The consideration of logistic, budget, resources, personnel efficiency, tasking and scheduling. So we're talking about security management here. We're talking about how the administration to deploy the resources to secure, to bring about the security programs. There are 5 sectors at least. This is a 1980 work, so it has been like more than 20 years. There are also many development in the field, but most security scholars agrees on these 5 sectors as being the basic. The first is military sectors, political sectors, economic sectors, societal sector, environmental sectors. I will only give one example. For example, in economic sectors, how economic becomes security issues. For example, in the 1940 and 1960s, when the Cold War is being at the peak, the Cold War being the Soviet Union and the United States of America, the only way to preserve peace is through trade. So if there is no trade, then the possibility of war is very, very high. Because what? Because people will be busy by doing trade, busy by producing products and services, etc. Busy in selling their economic products, etc. That will make war becomes expensive. When war becomes expensive, people will not or even people will oppose the leaders or the presidents, the kings, whoever intention to go to war, because war has become expensive. So the economic security means how when we securing the economy, we secure also the security of the state, security of the people, etc. Whoever your reference object. So that's how economic security becomes a security sector. There are many debates in the securitization issue. That, for example, we're talking very technical in technical terms between internalists and externalists. There's whether we analyze securitization in terms of the language inside the interiority of the securitization, or we're talking about the exteriority of the securitization, means the audience, the receptors of the securitization. There are also debates between the conditions of success versus the conditions of possibility. What is the conditions successful securitization, a failed securitization? But on the other hand, people will also debate about what makes any kinds of securitization to happen. If we don't use language, can securitization still be happen, etc. There's also iterative and performative. Not only performative, we have touched on the concept of performative. By iterative mean by saying something we claim authority. By saying something we create meaning. For example, if I don't know anything about security, but I keep on talking about security, you will be persuaded into seeing me as a security expert, simply because I keep on saying security, 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 security. Nah, that's how iterative security comes to happen. So is authority needed to securitize, or on the other hand, is it by securitizing we claim authority? Now that's the debate in this field. Securitization as a socialization or diffusion of meaning, or in itself fabricate a meaning. So it's not merely just socializing the idea of security, idea of threat, blah, blah, blah. But by saying that you are being threatened, then the threat itself become materialized. That's also the debate here. Securitization versus securitization. And in the last years, 2020, there emerged a post-colonial debates on what is normal in normal politics. When we talk securitization as displacing normal politics to exceptional politics, what does normal means? Is normal means the way government works in the Western world? That's the that's the critic from the post-colonial scholars. So there are many aspects where securitization can happen. Okay, in the last section, I will present a bit on how to deploy this theory. This is a work in progress. My work in progress. I don't know when will it be finished. So I'm using the analysis of genre. The analysis of genre. So we're talking about how the style of securitization, and I'm adopting internalist approach. It means I don't see outside of the securitization, and I try to map the genre and the vicissitudes, the changes between the genre, and see what knowledge can be extracted from the patterns from the data. I cannot translate all these uh, all the data in English, but in the red floating shape, I try to like squeeze to summarize what does it mean. For example, in the first Mahfud MD, for example, he says Corona will not come to Indonesia because it is known even among Indonesian that Indonesian regulation is super complicated, that even COVID-19 is reluctant to come to Indonesia, not only investors, but also COVID-19. That's all. That's a joke, of course. And then the Budi Karya is a Ministry of Transportation, and he says, "Oh, come on, don't worry, because Indonesian people will not be infected by COVID-19 because we eat cat rice. Cat rice is a nasi kucing. Cat rice is known for non-hygienic foods sold in street vendors. It means our body immune is being built simply by keep on consuming cat rice. Also, it's a joke. And then Luhut Panjaitan is one of the ministers also of maritime and investment. He says Corona. He was making a joke. Corona is a brand of automobile. And then Ripkap Ciptaning is a DPR. What is DPR? Representative, House of Representative, from House of Representative. It says Corona is being an acronym of Komunitas Ronda Mempesona, literally community of gorgeous widows. So he warns the boys in the parliament to be aware of this Corona. Also a joke. And then Mahfud MD is making a misogynic joke on how Corona is like your wife, blah blah blah. So this is a funny edition. How in the early COVID, like in the end of 2019 and the early of 2020, Indonesian leaders didn't take Corona seriously. It even make a fun of it. But in the like January and February, the joke becomes something more underestimating. So like they say, just enjoy. If you enjoy and you have enough food, and everything's gonna be all right. Also, our health ministry say that, come on, don't be worried, because this disease can be cured by itself. So you don't have to worry. You just have to pray. Keep on praying. By praying, and everything will be all right. Blah, blah, blah. And then the right hand side, if you can say how you can see how the logic can be derived from our health minister is quite spectacular. If face mask price soars high, it is because of you, because you keeps on buying it, then the prices soars so high. So it displays the problem with something that is more not serious in nature. Fast forward several months, we see the funny genre, the underestimated genre has evolved into something that's more thrill, that is more tension. The metaphors of war is being used. For example, as a military strategy, war commander in chief, war and peace dictions like flooding the public discussion of the coronavirus. So it is not also happening in Indonesia. For example, Jokowi declares it, and our president declares it in ASEAN. Donald Trump even liken it with Pearl Harbor. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. I view the invisible enemy, the coronavirus, as war. The fight to slow the spread of COVID-19 is our big war. It's a medical war. We have to win this war. I view it as a wartime precedent. So the securitization happens by deploying war-like dictions here. And then Emmanuel Macron from France, this tiny hidden virus is at war with the whole world, not the world, blah, blah, blah. India, one of the politicians in Indonesia says it's a total war. Even also another people from the higher ups in Indonesia saying protective clothing as homing missile. I don't know how can I validate this claim. So what's as I said earlier that securitization as a security.
Sorry, Mr.
As
Yossi,
a
your time
security.
might be it's 5 minutes again for make it shorter, I think. Okay, thank you, Mr. Rossi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, as I said earlier, that what makes securitization a special speech act is that it can create a space of exception. So security is not only speech act in that it engenders meaning by saying something, by saying security, but the implication, the consequence of security is that we are entering a zones of exceptional. When we say it by using the war dictionary, war vocabulary, so we can also see how this zone of exception has become like a war zone, like everything is possible. For example, like up until I just cannot understand how people opt for herd immunity. Herd immunity is like a strategy for mass death, and I am agree with it. In Philippines, I don't know, maybe you can confirm. Duterte also warns against violating lockdown and threatening people, just shoot them dead without any judicial or legal concerns. Even Donald Trump goes so far as to suggest people to use like, what is it, like the chemical things that we use in the bathroom. So that's an exceptional war zone. It means when we secure something, we also create a zone of exception where some powers has become more special, more strengthened, while the other one, and usually the public, usually the people, has become weakened. So the case of securitizations against COVID-19 showcases how security and communication are not only intertwined, but can have dire beyond words consequences. I just skipped this. So to conclude, security can only arise from securitization. So without the speech act of saying security, there will be no security. And then second, securitization is a special speech act in that it not only creates the space of security, but also it creates a zone of exception. Securitization comprises of words and wordplays, but it is in no way reducible to mere words. So we cannot just saying that security is only words and nothing more, because if we limit security only words, we cannot will be blinded with how this word have consequence that is concrete and real in practice. Security communication take on securitization will prompt scholars to take dialogical and linguistic process more seriously, more specifically, and more technically. Because each and every platforms will also have its own language. For example, can you securitize something with programming language like with Python, with R, blah, blah, blah. That will also be possible. When we're talking about algorithm, we will have to confront its material and technical dimension. Otherwise, we will be stuck in something that's more general and more normative. And by saying something that is normative is non-solutable. At last, thank you very much. I'm sorry if it takes longer than schedule. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention, and I hope we can have a fruitful discussion. I give back to the moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hiskia Yosias Polimpung, for giving us such informative and interesting presentation. Okay, probably before we continue to the next material presentation, I would like to take summary from the explanation by Mr. Yosi. Okay, the first is there are basic assumption of security communication. It's the first is security as communicative in nature, and then security is an effect of communication. And then there are four scope of security communication. The first is studying security as communication event, and then studying communication in the context of security. And the third is studying the manifestation, forms, and definition of security or insecurity made possible by today's system of communication. And the last is studying the possibility of mode and method of securitization made possible by the existing constellation of communication apparatus. And then in security communication, security is the intertwine of its technicalities, and the second is its languages, and then its specific environmental complexity. And then about the security as a speech act theory has a three perspective. The first is location. It means like semantic meaning of the words uttered. And then location, it seems like intention. And then the last is perlocation. It means like intended effect on feeling, behavior, and thinking. And about the securitization, seems like the process by which a non-security issues is transformed into the security issues. And security sectors has many perspective sectors. The first is military, the second is political, economic, societal, and environmental. And then about the stats of the art debates, there are some comparison. The first is internalis against externalis, and then condition of success against condition of possibility, and then iterative against performative, and the fourth is securitization against insecuritization, and the last is Western against post-colonial setting. Okay, now let's move to the next material presentation. Before that, I would like to introduce our second speaker. Her name is Carmelita Betts Chavez, PhD, CSP, CST, and she is the current dean of the College of Criminal Justice Education of the University of Mindanao, Philippines, and now he serves as IQAMI Zonal Assessor of the Commission on Higher Education. And then she is at present the Regional Director of the Professional Criminologists Association of the Philippines Region 11 Chapter. Dean Chavez has earned the following degrees. The first is Bachelor of Science in Criminology from the Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Colleges in General Santos City. And then he continued his master and doctoral program from the Philippine College of Criminology, Manila. Ladies and gentlemen, so please join me in welcoming our second speaker, Mrs. Carmelita B. Chavez, PhD, CSP, CST. Mrs. Carmelita, time is yours.
Thank you, moderator. I would just like to make this clear. I will not be presenting any PowerPoint presentation because I am tasked today to react on the presentation of Dr. Pulimpong. Actually, the presentation of Dr. Pulimpong had been explained by our moderator clearly. It was well presented, it is comprehensive, as well as it is thorough. What I would like to react on, I will just be reacting to the presentation actually of Dr. Pulimpong. This afternoon, I have 2 points to discuss. So I agree with Dr. Pulimpong that when we talk about security and communication, we differ, of course, on perspective. So the one thing that I caught on the presentation of Dr. Pulimpong is that security is communicative in nature. Security is an effect of communication. I agree with the speaker because security and communication actually work hand in hand. According to Sir Pulimpong, security, we differ in perspective. That is why what I will be discussing to you might be foreign to most of our participants this afternoon. It's because our perspective on security is on law enforcement because of our course, criminal justice education. So in our context, we say security is a state of being free. Okay, free from danger or threat. That is how we define security in our context in criminology. That is why we say that security communication security communication happen when two entities are communicating and do not want a third party to listen in. My context is on law enforcement, no? And so we say that secure communication in our context here in the Philippines includes means by which people can share information with varying degrees of certainty that third parties cannot intercept. Okay, so that is why when we talk about security communication in our context here in the Philippines, we say that there are a lot of methods used in order to break this security. One of which is bugging. I know most of you, especially communication students, you know what bugging is. Okay, so most of the time, this is although traditional. This is traditional way of intercepting information, but it is still being used nowadays. Okay, another sample of method that is used in order to break security is the laser audio surveillance. This is the more high-tech one being used in our IT in order to intercept confidential information. Okay, so another point that was being presented by our speaker is that security can be online privacy. Okay, security can also be a national security. That's true. That is why our government in the Philippines has been spending a lot of money in gathering experts just to ensure that intrusion of our privacy, be it online, it can also be traditional, the rights of our residents or community can be protected. And as well as the government confidential information, because nowadays communication is varied. And most of the time, the infrastructure now is very much different from before. Most of our governments are trying hard to come up with experts in order to prevent a collapse of the assets, information, security, document security, as well as confidential military information, because security communication is widely used, of course, in military, in transportation, as well as, of course, in our communication. And if these three infrastructures in our government would bog down, the whole country would be in chaos. The whole country will be affected, and a lot of resources can be wasted if not. That is why our government, we have now, in order to cope with the problems on security, especially cyber, our government is trying to harness the expertise of our people, creating agencies of our law enforcement, that is the Philippine National Police, as well as the National Bureau of Investigation. They are the expert on this, and they are the ones that investigate and prosecute people who would like to infiltrate the confidential information of our government. So you might say that what I am talking is totally different from what was being discussed by Dr. Polimpong. Different in the context that we have different perspective, we have different expertise, and most of the time, our focus is on how to deal with communication. Although, sir, you have also discussed the different security measures that has been implemented in the different countries. However, they are already advanced, you know. The Philippines had been trying to be at par with what is being practiced in the Western world. However, with the limited resources, limited expertise, we only have this much in our government. However, our people in the Philippines are assured that our government is willing and even spend materials and resources of the government in order to prosecute and prevent the proliferation of the intrusion of the security, privacy of our people. Okay, so I think that's the thing that I was able to catch up of the presentation of Dr. Polimpong. Thank you very much, sir, for your sharing. And we appreciate our students. Our interns are actually in the room. They are also listening. And I think they have also gained a lot of knowledge out of the presentation that you have given. So thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Carmelita Bates Chavez, PhD, for giving us such informative and interesting presentation. I try to, before we continue to Q&A session, I would like to try to connecting the dots between the explanation of Mr. Yossi and then Mrs. Carmelita. Okay, Mrs. Carmelita, try to respond what Mr. Yossi explained. The first is like security and communication is the two entities that who work hand in hand, and then security is the state of being free. So, like Mr. Yossi said in the first slide, security is about, it could be feeling, but it could be condition. So, like security, like Mrs. Carmelita said, security is state of being free. And then the Mrs. Carmelita tells about the condition of the sorry, of her country, about the Philippines condition. Like the Philippines or the national government try to effort hard or struggle to solve the problem about the security. Uh, like she said, security, it could be digital affair like cyber security, data privacy, and then many more. And then, but security, it could be conventional affair like national security, and then uh, about the hard diplomacy, and then about the war, and then many more. So I try to conclude or take summary. Mrs. Carmelita agree about what Mr. Rossi said about security as a concept, and then as a relations with the communication concept, and etc. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so now come to the question and answer session. If you have any question about this topic or previous presentation, you can raise hand and or write the question in comment section below. Okay, I will wait. I think I have already find the first question. Okay, wait. Okay, okay, okay. The first question of it's from Matdio Siahaan. He is from Ubara, from economic faculty. He wants to asking question for Mr. Yossi. Okay. He asking about the relation about hoax and security. He asking how to deal with hoax information that often occurs in communication on social media. Okay. And then Mrs. Wichitrayasha asking question to uh, Mrs. Carmelita Chavez. He said, what is the best way to protect the online security of the people, such as making sure the cyberspace is a safe space for everyone, free from cyberbullying, hate speech, and etc., while also guaranteeing their freedom of speech online. So, uh, how about the speaker, Mr. Yossi? I think. Uh, do you want directly? Do you want answer directly?
Okay. Two questions. Yeah.
I think the first question is for you, Mr. Yossi, and the second question is for Mrs. Carmelita.
Oh, but okay. Yeah. Just to respond, what Dr. Chavez has commented on my presentation, which I agree so much, because what Dr. Chavez was talking about is seeing the security issues from the law enforcement. So if we try to put the law enforcement discussion in the discussions of the stages of securitization, it appears on the last stage. On the last stage is when if everybody could still recall the five stages of securitizations. The first being the referent object, and the second is the threat construction, the declaration of security, and then the state of exception, and the mobilizations of resources. So law enforcement occurs in the fifth stages. Well, what does it mean? It means when a enforcement comes in, when law enforcement takes the part, it requires the four aspect of securitization has been finished, has been done before. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, this securitization theory can also be seen from a communication perspective by emphasizing on how we declare security. For example, how we carry out the programs of security, for example, from the criminology or from the government perspective, or on how we ideologically pick choose to side with which kind of people, what kind of people, for example, in the event of, for example, in the clash between labor union and versus the capitals, for example, the big entrepreneurs, for example, the companies. So if we say that we choose to side with the big companies, and we will say that the security of the labor is non-issue, right? And vice versa, if we choose to side with the labor, so the concerns that is being raised by the owners of the companies is non-issue, it's a non-security issue. So it's, yes, it differs in perspective. So the points of my presentation was actually how we can like make a dialogue across disciplines, across perspectives, across point of view. So in order to facilitate a point of view, in order to facilitate constructive dialogues, so I'm joining with many scholars in security studies in doing a theory on how to minimally define, minimally accept propose one definitions of security. So if we say freedom from being free from threat, that's legit. That being free from hunger, that's also legit. If you say anything about security, like for example, security means being affluent or being wealthy, that's also legit. So we're not talking about the specific definition. We're not talking about specific reference or legal reference in security. What the security studies that I mentioned in my presentation would like to do is how to make a general model. What makes security security? What makes a security become security issues? That is can be used by the legal scholars, can be used by cultural students, by the anthropology, by the computer science, blah blah blah. So that's why my presentation, yes, it's coming from the communication perspective, but the implication, as I has mentioned earlier, is not limited to communication. So everybody could use it, could make a like interdisciplinary dialogues with this theory, etc. For Dio, how to deal with hoax information that often occurs in communication and social media. Yeah, it depends on. Okay, I'm trying to use this framework, this conversation framework. First, reference object. Who should be secure? Is it the platform? Is it the people? Or is it the state? You have to choose it. So there's a saying in political theory: if you choose state, then you will neglect the people, and if you choose people, you will have to weaken the sovereignty of the state. So that it's something that cannot go hand in hand. In history always testified that these two interests cannot go hand in hand. So what the government being at the center of between these two interests, they have to like moderate it. They have to make a third way, make a rational or make a democratic bargaining between these two positions. So my question to Pak Madio, I think we have to agree when we're talking about security in social media, whose security is being concerned? Is it the security of the platform, the Twitters, for example, or is it the security of the people? But which people? The buzzers or those who are outside the political arena? Who? So in this sense, hoax itself can be relative. For example, for one perspective, sorry, allow me to recount a research from Gallup in 2019 or 2020. It says And they make a survey. They made a survey in American citizen, and the result is quite striking. Because what? Because people tend and choose information not only based on what the truth or the lies, but based on what comforts them, but what makes them being validated. So the question of truth in hoax is non-issue for for majority of readers, because all the readers only want their view become validated, blah blah blah. And then the Twitter algorithms and Facebook algorithms, the bubbles, etc. It facilitates the hoax, the firing up of the hate that is being flamed by the message, etc. So the question of hoax is often not so simple, because if we talk about hoax, is that the problem? Is that the question of truth, the truism of the news? To what extent tourism of the news becomes the problem? Because if we also see it in another perspective, for example, in algorithmic perspective, economic, if we see, choose digital economic perspective, we will see the more what matters most for the platform is when a message is viral. So if you ask yourself which message is viral, is prone to viral more, is it a quote hoax message or non-hoax message? Of course it's the hoax ones. So we have many rights to suspect that the platform itself grows the hoaxes. So if we talk about when the platform itself grows hoaxes, like it plans, it also perpetuate, it profits on the hoaxes. So I don't think we can work with the platform itself, etc. So yeah, I cannot answer your question if the question is not clearly specified in that in securitization sense, because security, yes, security is for everybody, but when we're talking in theoretical and conceptual sense, the interest of security will be different, whether you are a citizen or you are a apparatus, or you're big companies, tech company, for example, in this case, or you are the state. So that's why Barry Buzan outlined 5 sectors. It means not only 5 sectors, but these 5 contesting state sectors that talks about security. Thank you, Pak Fadli.
Okay, thank you so much for the explanation from Mr. Yosi. And then we continue to the next question. Mrs. Utarajaya from Bayangkara University. She asking about is the best way to protect the online security of the people, such as cyberspace, like cyberbullying, hate speech, and many more. So, Mrs. Carmelita, would you like to answer directly? Sorry, Mrs. Carmelita, you still mute your first.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the question, actually, there are 2 questions in this part. One is how to protect online security of people. Actually, you would not worry, because social media like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, these are free. And now, since there are a lot of cyberbullying that is being experienced by people, because we have to understand Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other social media are free, and everyone can use anytime they want. And the only thing that is being the improvement that is being placed by this giant social media platform is they have prosecution issues already. Many who have experienced cyberbullying, hate speech in these different platforms are immediately taken out of the web. So they have a team that would monitor what is being placed on the social media. If we talk about cyberbullying, I think it's the responsibility of each country in order to protect its people. Just like here in our country, in the Philippines, our legislators enacted laws and ordinances in order in order to protect the people using these platform medias, and in such a way that there are agency involved in this cyberbullying, hate speech, uploading of pornographic materials, uh, and other things that is not good for its user. Our country or our government actually instituted different law enforcement units in order to protect our people. So if you have been victimized by cyberbullying, hate speech, pornographic things, you have to go to a particular unit of the police, and they will help you protect yourselves, prosecute, and then go to court if needed. And so this is the the protection of everyone would always start from ourselves. We should not post things that can affect, that can also offend other people. In that way, hate will not propagate, and we will be living a peaceful life. And so, but the protection, security protection needs to be beefed up by government, because it's the government that can, the government has the capacity to protect its people against intrusion of their personal information. Okay, so I think that's all I can say. I hope I was able to answer the question of which Utarajaya. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer from Mrs. Carmelita. Okay, is there my voice? Okay. Okay, for the next question, his name is Renent Ki Fiskara from University of Mindanao. I think he or she asking question for Mr. Hiskia because he speak about the securitization. Okay. The question is, if you can use securitization in a speech act, so is that a dangerous thing to do? For example, like you can play the words in safe way, so that you can evade any hate speech or denouncement from other people, like social media or any other media outlets. Would you like to answer directly, Mr. Yosi?
Okay, thank you. Is it a dangerous thing to do or not? The fact that the securitization is a speech act, is it a dangerous thing to do or not? My simple question would be, it depends. It depends on the users. But my presentation doesn't emphasize the moral dimensions of these securitization theories. So what I mean by not emphasizing the moral dimension, I mean, it's a purely axiological sense. So what I limit in my presentation is saying the nature, what makes a security a security. So when you use these tools to hurt others, to perpetrate hate speech and to make something that is good or bad, and it depends on who you are. It's up to you guys. So it's not something that is that we should not judge a theory by its axiological implication. In fact, the theory is neutral. For example, you can use it. For example, Hitler used securitization when saying that the Jewish is something that is to be detested. There is stole our money, stole everything from the German people, blah, blah, blah. So that's the threat narratives. They use securitization. They make a reference object of a pure Aryan people for Germanic people, and they construct threat as being the Jewish. That's a securitization. But also when we talking about to mobilize aid for a society that is impacted by flood, for example, by environmental disaster. We also use securitization. For example, in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, then president said when a tsunami in Aceh, they declare it as a national disaster. It means when they declare it as national disaster, it means helps and aids and donations from across the world, across the countries, flooding the Aceh. So that wouldn't be so if SBY, the then president, said that the disaster is just a drizzle, just nothing that we have to worry about because the state has it under control. If the securitization gesture is said in that way, so there would be no flood of donation. There would be no multitude of helps and aids from the international community. So it depends. Coming back to Mr. Vizcara's question, it depends on who use it and to what purpose. But if you would like to do it effectively, then you have to follow strictly the 5 stages of securitization. So it doesn't imply if you're doing it good, then technically good, will it means morally good? That's another question. What this presentation is all about is only on the technicalities on generating or doing things with saying the word security. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Yosi, for the answer. Okay, for the next question, actually, it's not about the security as purely security. I think it's about the communication concept. It's about the communication theory about Laswell model. Maybe Mr. Yosi can answer the question about the communication as a concept. He talking about the communication mechanism according to the Laswell model. Uh, the question is if the effect or impact of the communication that we do is not in line with the expectation of the communicator, can this communication be said to be effective, sir? Because he said sir, so I think the question is for you, Mr. Yosi. Okay. Yeah, actually, it's not apa ya? It's not sorry. It's not relation about the security and communication, but uh, at the end, the communication is the entities, the important entities to connect or to relation with the security concept. Would you like to answer? I think, Mr. Rossi.
Yeah, but the effectiveness of communication, yeah. Yes, it's not related directly to the talks, but maybe I can give a comment a bit on the effectivity of communication in the context of security communication. So when can we assess the effectiveness of security in securitization? If we can formulate a question. The answer is simple. It's when the securitizing actor, those who are doing the securitization move, when declaring the security, when they communicating the sense of security, the sense of being threatened, when they pick words, when they sort of arrange sentences, which sentence that persuade more, which sentence that invoke certain feelings. That's when communication, the effectiveness of security communication can be applied. So uh, coming back to the theory of speech act, the perlocution. So the effectiveness of communication somehow is not seen in when the people understand it so much, or according to the state or not, or according to those who securitize things or not. But on the other hand, it's on the effect. So for example, the securitization can be effective, can be functional, even though the people doesn't understand what the statesmen speak, for example. And it's happening. It's ironically happening in even in the context of democracy. Because what? Because in today's democracy, the people only becomes an entity. So if I just say it out of ritual, so if I am to securitize an issue, I just have to grab a mic and invite a journalist. But if I choose to close my ears to the critics from the society, from the parliament, blah, 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 that could still happen. So that depends on effectiveness. We're talking about effectiveness that varies across political forms of states. For example, if it's democracy, then the effectiveness is, it must be measured by the way people understand, the way people legitimate the issues. But on the other hand, if the context is authoritarian, autocratic, like right-wing populist government, they usually doesn't concern about what people think, what the aspirations of people, what they have to do, just simply to make a checklist on the democracy checklist, democracy a prerequisite. There has to be a public consultation. I often being invited by the representative, by the ministry, etc., just simply like to validate, okay, I have been talking with an academic, so the policy is good. Then they disregard everything that people that these academics have said on the policy. So coming back to the question, is effectiveness can still be used in the security communication? Yes, it still be used, but we have to be aware, because the effectiveness of communication in the securitization, especially in the context of security politics, doesn't cling to the meaning itself. Doesn't always concern the replication of meaning between the audience and the speakers. But on the other hand, it's on the perlocution effect. So what is the intended effect is that they give legitimacy, that the program of security enrolls, that everything, that the programs of security, the activity of security measure, etc., is in place. That makes security communication effective. Yeah, I hope that gives a non-intuitive answer for Mr. Who? Alvin. Alvin. Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you so much for the answer, Mr. Yossi. Okay, in this question, I think in the last two questions, maybe Mr. Yossi and Mrs. Carmelita can share their own perspective, because Mrs. Asima from the Utarajaya or from the University of Bayangkara asking about the security issues who relate with the security in Indonesia and then in Philippines. And then the question is, in the tense conditions, such as tensions in Indonesia between the police and students during enactment of the Omnibus Law, or in the Philippines between the police and armed groups, the community can become uproar and make security conditions more volatile and worsen, forming small groups or movements that can direct it against government policies. On this condition, how communication, maybe this is the question, how communication security can be applied at the first attempt to rescue the minds of the public's perception that the current social conditions can be secured. Okay, maybe Mrs. Carmelita, would you like to answer directly?
Yeah. Here in the Philippines, we are known of people usually when the community or we have people who feel that they are oppressed, that their rights were not respected, they usually go to the streets and protest. Our government usually um, allowed it. They get whether they have the permit of the rally or they do not have this permit, but as long as they would stage their protest peacefully, then our policemen would just allow them to do so. So they would just, we have this term maximum tolerance. They would allow protesters to be on the streets and air whatever grievance they have of the government, as long as they will not commit other crimes. They will just be there and air whatever grievance that they have. And especially on students can also do that, and the government will not take that against them. They are allowed to do that. We have a lot of progressive groups in the academe. We have the leftists, we call them. They have different perspective from the government, but the government or the police just allow them to air whatever grievance that they have. On the issue of armed groups, this is different. Armed groups should not be on the streets. They should not be airing whatever grievance they have because they are against the government. And so, in this case, our law enforcement or our policemen or our armed forces of the Philippines would always go after them, especially if they have arms. And it is not sanctioned by the government. We call them rebels actually. And so they cannot just simply be airing whatever grievance they have, but they have representatives and they want to talk with the government. We have what we call a panel of peace process advisors that can talk in behalf of the government and can also negotiate in behalf of the government. And so if these issues come up in our, usually this is very familiar here in the Philippines, and still we are still doing that. Our government are still doing all the negotiations that these people, especially the armed groups, would go back to the fold of the government so that there will be no shedding of blood. However, on the case of students and other residents or other members of the community who would want to air whatever grievance they have to the government, they can do so. And our policemen would just allow them as long as they do it peacefully. Yes, that's all, sir. I hope I shed light with the issue of ASIMA.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer from Mrs. Carmelita. Okay, probably Mr. Yossi, would you like to share your perspective about this question about how communication security can be applied as the first attempt to rescue the minds of the public's perception that the current social conditions can be secured? Would you like to share your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. First, I have to clarify that I'm not talking about this. This presentation is not about communication security. It's about, on the other hand, it's about security communication. Because when we talk about communication security, we're talking about the technicalities of securing communication channels, securing communication processes, which is beyond the science of communications. That's will be studied by those who study in computer science, etc. So I think I assume Bu Asima here referring to security communication and not communication security. Yeah, if that's granted, so I can answer the question. Otherwise, I cannot answer it. So, how security communication can be applied as the first attempt to rescue the minds of the public's perception? Okay. If we in the event of clash or uproar between protesters and the police and the state, etc., how security communication can be applied is, games. I'm sorry, I have to always say this. It depends. It depends who are saying security communication, who are doing the securitization, and who will we regard as the referent object, who must be secure. If what we have to secure is the safety of the students, so the securitization will be different from those who are thinking that the security, the safety of those in the House of Parliaments, that should be secure. Again, this is my presentation is, I'm not picking side and who have to be secure and this one should be secure, blah blah blah. No, the concept, the securitization as a concept, as a theory, doesn't take side with everybody. So it's a neutral, it's a general appeal on how we should see security, how we can construct a security issue. So, for example, if I choose the side of the state, for example, I could choose in order to neutralize, in order to make a pacify, in order to like securitize the condition. I could just simple, like for example, in today's lingo, we could just use they're being bribed. Being bribed, it means they're not authentic. It means they lie. It means they are against the state. It means they can be obliterated. So when you choose the word they are being bribed, mereka disuap, or there are like people who blackmail them, people who paid them, etc. That's also securitizing move. When we construct a threat out of the material fact in front of our eyes, in front of us, there is the ocean of people gathering outside the House of Representatives building, blah blah blah, and then we label them as somebody as those who are being bribed, for example, and that will secure the sovereignty, that will secure the states, for example. But it will entails the construction of threat. What is being threatened? It's the sovereignty of the state. It's the reputations of the senates, of the representatives, blah, 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 and not the safety of the people. On the other hand, if we choose the people, the safety of those who are being those who are protesting, so the securitization, the scenario for the securitization will be different from the first one I mentioned earlier. So again, in order to answer this Bu Asima's question, I think we have to be clear first in the first place whose security is matters most, and we cannot safely assume that everybody's security can be secure. No, you have to pick one. That's the political dimension of securitization. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for Mr. Rossi for the answer. Well, actually, we have last two questions, but it's sent to my personal message. I think the first is for Mr. Rossi, because I believe that Mr. Rossi is very familiar with these issues about our country also. And then for last question is for Mrs. Carmelita, because it's about the Philippines, or it's about the Philippine issues. Okay, the first is from Mrs. Titis Nurwulan. He said that, she said that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we see the discourse wars between the pro and contra, between who believes the COVID or not, and between who believes about the vaccine and or not. And then so there is cause hoax and disinformation on vaccine, such as how it could be conspiration from big pharma companies which circulated online. And then the impact is social media users were affected by the conspiration which caused a wave anti-vaccine, uh, and then for for the social media users who doesn't believe the COVID. So why do you think hoax and conspiracy theories on COVID is so rampant and accepted in social media? So I think the question is, what do you think about the role of the state, of the media, or and social media platform itself in that problem? So I think because state or media or even social media can play the quote unquote seems like agenda setting probably for manage the wave or the topic in the society. I think like that. Would you like the answer directly? I think, Mr. Yossi.
Sorry, can you state again what
Okay.
the question?
Okay.
Is it how conspiracy theory could be
I
addressed
think the
by
question is how is role of the state media how is the role of the state media and social media platform itself in that problem? I think seems like uh, there is a problem or there is issues about the COVID-19. Seems like there is a polarization about the perspective or about the perception about the COVID-19, about the vaccine, about the disease, about the virus, about everything. So uh, what is your perspective about the role of the state, of the government, and the media and social media in that problem? I think because I think it like you presentation, like you present in your previous slide, you said about securitization related with the COVID issues. I think like that, Mr. Rossi.
okay, let me answer this way. If so, first and foremost, we have to be clear from the very beginning that securitization does not always imply state. So everybody can use securitization. Everybody can be securitized even. So if you want people to securitize it, by securitize it means you are in individual sense, yeah, in individual dimension. By securitizing means you're taking security issue, threat issue seriously, and then you displace your normal behavior, your normal routines to a new routines that can mitigate or even overcome the security. So that's the definition of securitization, like in general, if we apply it to individual dimension. So coming back to the conspiracy and what the state can do in order to I don't know, because for me the pro and anti-COVID is legitimate debate. I think what makes it the acceptability of the pro-COVID can be accepted by those who are pro and cannot be accepted by those who are not. So if we are committed to democratic debates, what the state should do, what the apparatus, police apparatus or security apparatus can do, they have to secure the democratic nature of this debate. By securing the democratic nature of this debate, it means they have to polish, they have to like select, they have to actively combat those who are giving an argument without base, those who are giving argument only out of sentiment, those who are just making a wild guess or just making a subjective assumption, etc. So yeah, the state will have to be the referee, for example, between the opposing poles. So if those who are pro cannot give the scientific basis of their argument, then they have to be disqualified. Then they have to be I have to say it clearly. They have to be deprived of their rights to speak in public. So my position is quite is very clear in this position. I don't fancy freedom of expression. So democracy and freedom of expression is two things that is different. So freedom of expression, you are free to speak insofar you speak something that is that can be held accountable, that you can be responsible of it. So I hate those who are keep on saying freedom of expression while using avatars or using alternative accounts, blah blah blah, by using other people. No, if we are committed to democracy, so you have to present your argument as clear as you can, even when you are doing it in securitization. So somehow, if we even those who are science can be mistaken. For example, when the WHO and the French president, they say that they adopt chloroquine as a medicine, as the most important medicine that has to be adopted in national policy, etc. They mistaken because what? Because they are only basing their argument based on one shady journal, one shady article, and then when the scientific community scrutinize, put the journal under scrutinize, and the authors cannot respond, cannot answer the critics, and then the WHO revoke the policy, the statement, and that is for me, in a democratic sense, that's a shame. Because what? Because how can you make a decision out of unfounded argument, and that's not democratic. So democracy only happens when all the policy being taken, being carried out by the government has the rational dimension, has the deliberative, if we use Jürgen Habermas, has the rational aspect of the argument. So yeah, I think that I hope that answered Bu Titi's question. So in general, what the state should do is to ensure the democratic debates and to police whether one side of the party of the poll threatening others with undemocratic means, or they using making an argument, unfounded argument, blah blah. So the state has to intervene when the democracy itself is in danger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yoshi, for the answer. Okay, probably for the last question, very last question is for Mrs. Carmelita, because the audience asking about issues in the Philippines. Probably I would like to read first. Okay. Okay. Probably the last question is cancelled because Mrs. Carmelita is permitted uh, to leave the webinar. Okay, for make it shorter, before we close the webinar, I would like to invite Mrs. Rusella B. Regidor, PhD, as the Assistant Dean of College UM Tagum College to give the closing remarks of this webinar. Mrs. Rusella, you might take the floor.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. to the Dean of the Faculty of Communication, Dr. Ann Widodo, distinguished resource speakers, Dr. Hizkia Yosias Salimpo, and Dr. Carmelita Chavez, University of Mindanao officials, participants from the Universitas Bayangkara Jakarta Raya, and from the University of Mindanao, organizers of this event, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We have reached the end of this webinar, and for now, we shall be closing the door of a stimulating discussion about communication security. However, it is a privilege and an honor to be entrusted with such an undertaking at a gathering like this. As with all such events, this webinar has been an outstanding example. Participants' minds have been attacked by a torrent of information and concepts. This is indeed plenty to reflect upon. This webinar in any way enhances the participants' individual and professional development. On behalf of the University of Mindanao Administration, I would like to thank all the speakers, participants, and the organizers of this event. Your presence has been invaluable and without any doubt has helped make the event a great success. Thank you very much. Have a good day and stay safe.
Okay, thank you so much, Mrs. Lucella, for the speech. Okay, let's move to the last agenda is certificate giving to the speaker, which will be given by Mr. Dr. Aan Widodo Esikom Emiko. For Dr. Aan, time is yours.
Thank you, Pak Fadli. Thank you, Pak Yosi. Thank you so much for the presentation about security and in the communication context. This is certificate for Pak Yosi. Thank you. Okay, the next, thank you, Carmelita Bates Cafes, PhD, for your presence and your response to the international collaboration. I hope this collaboration will continue, and thank you. Thank you to all participants for this webinar, and thank you so much also to all the organization commit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the welcome speech or for the certificate giving from Mr. Dr. Aan Widodo. So, ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of this seminar. I'd like to thank you for the speaker for the informative and interesting presentation. And then for all the participants for the very active participation. Sorry. Finally, give the applause for the speakers and for you all. Okay, thank you so much for coming, and we hope that this event will be impactful for you. We look forward to seeing you in the next event. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you Pak Yosi udah jadi speaker, buat Pak An juga. Terima kasih banyak ya.
Terima kasih Mas, sama-sama.
Ya.
waiting for me. 'Cause we were just kids when we fell in